the bottom line is this is how much you have tied up out of your hard sweat equity, earned income. So what is the return on investment on what you've got tied up? Not on what the total purchase price of that property is, because that in reality is really what you're making. What is your return on investment on that? And when you look at that, we're over 25% on just about everything.
Welcome to the Cash Flow Chronicles. I'm your host, Jonny and the founder of Cattani Capital Group. For the last 2 years, I've been studying alternative assets and now help solve the problem of creating passive cash flow for creators, influencers, and busy professionals by bringing you 5 episodes a week of easy to understand education in the world of passive investing. What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Cash Flow Chronicles. I'm your host, Jonny, and I'm joined today by Evie Brooks. Evie is the CEO and founder of My Panama Vacation Realty. She's an international investor, educator, former Rich Dad Poor Dad advanced educator who has guided thousands of investors, expats, and digital nomad for 27 plus years through the process of locating, evaluating, and analyzing transactions for cash flow and ROI, relocating to a country outside where they were born, and getting a residence or second passport to ensure their plan B. Brooks is focused primarily on the expat market, digital nomad, and international investments since 2003, where she started working in Central America. Evie, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
We're grateful to have you. This will be an exciting conversation. I'm excited to bring this to the listeners. I'm sure this is a hot topic right now. I know you mentioned offline that, despite what people may think, there's always business for you, but, with the country being what could potentially be another economic collapse done once again by ourselves, this will be a good topic. I'm excited. And if you can't tell, I'm very intrigued personally. So let's start kind of at the beginning. You've got an awesome resume here. Take us back to the beginning. When did you kind of discover real estate and kind of this whole area and what's led you to now?
Well, I had not intended or planned on anything to do with real estate when I was in college. I was a CJ major, penology major, and wanted to go on into the law field. However, I got pregnant my last semester of college and was so sick that I did not have that luxury or option as intended or planned. And so I had a good friend that said, "Hey, I can get you a job with benefits," which was important at the time. I was a college student, so I didn't have an income and I didn't have insurance benefits. I didn't have any. And so I went into commercial real estate management, asset management in corporate America. And that's how I ended up in real estate. And I have never looked back. I only stayed in corporate America for 4 years because I was told that I had reached that glass ceiling after 3.5 years. And I knew that was not going to work for me. And so 6 months later, I gave my resignation, went out on my own, started investing, and the rest is history.
Wow. That's incredible. Okay, so let's kind of get into the root here. So you were an educator for Rich Dad Poor Dad, which is, in this industry, the purple Bible, right? I think, let's see, I've done probably 300 and some change interviews, and I'll bet at least 95% have mentioned Rich Dad Poor Dad as kind of their genesis moment. So
how many have been instructors with them?
I think only one other person, honestly. Yeah. So, let's kind of start there then. Talk about kind of being an educator and what it's like, in that system.
It is a rough road to hoe. I will tell you that. And I'm a country girl, as you probably can tell. And going on the road with the Robert Kiyosaki organization was brutal. You would leave on a Thursday, you would teach on a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, you would travel on a Monday, you'd come home, you'd do your personal stuff, and off you'd go again. And that was not my intent when I started teaching with them. I wanted to teach for fun once or twice a month, and it didn't turn out that way. They needed instructors to be on the road. And so it ended up just constantly being every single week, even on holidays and Mother's Day. And that was when I finally, in December, in a Mother's Day of 2014, I was like, I'm done, because I was already so busy in Panama at the time. I started in Costa Rica in 2003 with the Kiyosaki organization, teaching international investing and becoming an expat. And that's how I got my start in Central America, was in Costa Rica. But I love it. I mean, teaching and educating is my passion. Teaching other people what I've known and helping them prevent having the skint knees and the bruised up elbows that I've had with the mistakes that I've made in the industry. And I've always said, you know what? Don't be afraid to pay for a mentor coach in the industry that has gone before you and that has had great success, because you're going to get the education one way or the other. And if you take the other direction for education, you're going to pay tens of thousands of dollars more than you would by hiring somebody that can help you avoid the pitfalls. And so that's just always been my belief. It takes money to make money. I believe that you're going to avoid a lot of cost that you would not otherwise have to incur if you have somebody that knows the road before you and can help you avoid those pitfalls.
Absolutely. I could not agree more. I've talked ad nauseum on the show about the power of, that's what changed it for me, is I joined a mastermind program. If you're familiar with Hunter Thompson and the Raise Masters program.
I am, yes.
And I mean, absolutely life-changing. I'm still a member, it's been huge. And I talk at length at how important it is, right? And I know so many people want to do it alone, right? That's just unfortunately what we're taught, but that's not actually how the real world works. Okay, so Rich Dad Poor Dad education is where you learned about the international stuff. In fact, that's what you were teaching. So that explains where that came from. So now talk about exactly what you do, what My Panama Vacation Realty is, and we'll kind of start high level, then we can get into the weeds.
Okay, well, when I started with the Rich Dad organization in 2003 in Costa Rica, the whole focus was just teaching people how to invest internationally for the purpose of becoming an expatriate. Now, a lot of people have a different understanding of what expatriate means, but basically what it is anyone that wants to have a residence and or get a passport from a second country. Majority of the people do not give up their original home passport because they want to have that connection to their home country. There are a few that do, however, and those are the ones that are just saying, I'm not paying taxes in my country anymore. I'm done with that. And I want to move to a different country that does not have the tax burden that my country has. So you do have a few people that will give up citizenship, but most will get a second citizenship passport in a separate country. But a lot of our clients, over 50%, just want a second residence, whether it's a second home, a retirement home, a vacation home, or a rental income part of the time and second home part of the time. So there's a lot of different reasons that people do this. But I will tell you the top three are political unrest that we've been seeing over the last few years. Now, it wasn't when I started. The inflation issues, like, for example, I'll give you an example. Everybody's been talking about the price of eggs here in the United States being like up to $10 a dozen. 2.5 dozen eggs last week in Panama was $4.30.
Wow.
So, and a loaf of bread still $2. I just had one of the ladies I was working with from APS, which stated that her daughter just bought a loaf of bread for $10. A loaf of bread for $10. That was in New York. And so Panama has not had the type of inflation that we've had here in the United States. So that's your second. And then people are just looking for a plan B, just a plan B. And that became such a huge thing when we had the COVID pandemic, because people were wanting, like, what am I going to do? I got to get out of here, wherever they were. And I had people from all around the world. I got to get out of here. I've got to go somewhere else. And I literally sat in front of my computer talking to people from around the world day in and day out through the pandemic, the worst of it, looking for alternatives. And I had people buying property sight unseen in Panama, like you cannot believe.
Wow. That's incredible. So my first question is, what does that process look like? So expatriate, so you can keep it sounds like you can still be considered a citizen and still keep your US passport. So what does it look like to go get, and then you also get a Panama passport as well?
You can. It takes a little while. You start out by getting your residency, and you can get your residency in as little as 6 months, depending on what residency or visa program that you go with. And there's multiple different ones. One of them is the forestry visa. Then you've got the pensionata visa. You've got a lot of different options, the golden visa. So depending on which one you go with, you can get it in 6 months to 2 years. And during that time, you can stay in Panama for up to 180 days just off of a passport. You do not, if you're in one of the 180 some odd friendly nations, as long as you're from a friendly nation, you can stay in Panama with your passports, all you need. You don't need any kind of visa or anything to get there. So that's why we have attracted so many digital nomads, because they never have to get a visa. They can come stay for 179 days and then go over to Costa Rica for 3 days and then come back for another 179 days.
Oh, wow. Okay. So all you have to do is change countries in one of those countries. Okay.
For 3 days. Yep. And then come back. I mean, you could just fly back to your home country, to the United States. It's an easier flight than it is from the East Coast to the West Coast. For me, from Atlanta to California, I can get to Panama in 3.5 to 4 hours, depending on the tailwinds. So it's a very simple process, and it doesn't cost you a fortune. Like going to so many of these countries, it costs you a fortune just to get the visa. So, you have a limited amount of time to stay there, very strict restrictions. So easy. And Panama is just very open to this and to the expat community.
Wow. Interesting. Okay. That makes a lot of sense. Like I mentioned, I've got some people who go to Panama for different meetings for like Liberland, if you're familiar with that, libertarians. So let's get into the real estate part of it now, right? That's kind of the main focus. What does that look like in terms of, do you start with just raw land and then it's developed? Do you buy an existing building? What does that typically look like?
In Panama, it's a lot like Singapore or Miami, or these cities that are just so grown up. So you see everything vertical, everything goes up, 30 to 40 to 50 to 60 floors. And the developers that I work with, I've gone in when I started in Panama in 2012, after leaving Costa Rica, after the big crash of 2008. I went to Panama because the GDP was strong and the growth continued, where Costa Rica, that did not happen. And I started working with the developers. At first, I had to vet the developers. I had to make sure that the developers were strong financially, that they'd been around for a long time, that they'd never had bankruptcy on any projects that they've done, that they were vetted, and that they were safe. Because everything I do with my clientele, I want to make sure they have a safety net built in with multiple exit strategies, so that they're not stuck like so many people were in 2008. They had one exit strategy. I'm buying this property and it's going to go up, 26% in the next year, like it did last year. And I'm going to be wealthy. Well, it doesn't work that way. And you got to
how'd that work out?
Yeah, that didn't work out so well. And you've got to be prepared for, if this doesn't work out as you planned, then you got another option. So that's one of the strategies that I work with and that I teach. And so we deal with developers that do primarily condominiums, high rise, and really, really nice, like the Armani buildings, the Fendi buildings, the Wonder U buildings, those types of things. And the programs that I work with our developers is that they do developer financing, that they have non-recourse mortgages, that it's interest-only payments each month, and then once a year they'll pay a 5% principal payment. And it took me a long time to develop this. You don't even have to have a credit score, much less a good credit score, to be able to get financing. If you can come up with a down payment, you're in the deal. I can have somebody in a deal in 72 hours from the moment we speak.
Wow. And you don't need to have the visa or anything to do it, or you do?
No, you do not have to have anything. No visa, wow. Just a passport. That's it. And when I started there in 2012, the driver's license was all you needed. Your home state country driver's license. You didn't even have to have a passport, but now you do. You have to have a passport. So if I've got your passport and your contract and you signed it and sent it back, boom, you're done. You're in a deal. Now all you have to do is wire transfer the funds for the down payment, and you own a property.
Wow.
So we do everything from pre-construction, mid-construction, short-term, mid-term, long-term, and legacy type transactions. We do work in agricultural as well. I'm a dirt girl. I come from the farm, and so that's been a big market for us as well. But it's so easy, and it's non-recourse and for anybody that doesn't know, that means you have no liability for anything except that investment, that one investment. If anything goes awry, then that's the only thing you've got on the line from that particular mortgage. And so it took me quite some time to develop and put these programs together and find developers that would work with me, because they did not think outside of the box like we do here in the United States for investing. And so I started with one and then expanded to two, and now I have as many as I want. They're coming to me knocking on my door because of the amount of business that we do in Panama. So I'm very selective about who I even will work with and deal with at this point.
Wow. That's incredible. What an awesome system you've set up. And so what does it look like for an investor in terms of returns? You know, what do you typically recommend? Like what does that kind of look like? You mentioned some people are just doing their own vacation home, but if I wanted to get, a rental, something that could actually cash flow, for instance, what does that look like?
Well, we have everything now. I will tell you, depending on where you are and the type of building that you're in, you are going to have a different scenario or a different situation. Of course, none of us had ever experienced a COVID type situation. And I had properties that sat empty during COVID. And then I had properties that was over 90% occupied during COVID. Those properties are properties like the Wonders U. There was the Panama Wonders U, and it stayed over 90% occupied. Now that's an older building, but there's a brand new Wonders U that's being built right now that is exquisite. I mean, it is the most magnificent building that I have ever been in.
Wow.
Period. I mean, just Italian marble, floor to ceiling, including in the bathrooms, in the condos. And you can't believe the prices that you pay for these things compared to like Ontario or Montreal, Canada, or Los Angeles, California, or, Manhattan, New York, or wherever. You're looking at pennies on the dollar, literally somewhere between 25 to 50% of what you would pay for comparable in those locations. And some places even less than that. So you're able to get into these small down payment. I'm a big advocate about leveraging OPM and teaching other people how to build a huge portfolio with utilizing other people's money. So, I mean, I could get into that and just go on for hours about that one thing, because that's a whole scenario that if people really understand the power that they've got and what they could potentially do, it's mind-boggling. So it's a really, really simple process.
That's fascinating. So I have two questions. One is kind of basic. What is a typical down payment? Is it 5%, 10%, 20%?
It depends on the developer and it depends on the project and the time. Now, previously, we had programs where you could get in for 10% down at contract, 10% in 12 months, and 10% in 24 months. Now, with the increase in the interest rates, with what the Fed is doing to the world, and with increased cost of materials, most of us have gone to 20 to 30% down. I do have a couple of the projects that we're working on that's 50%. So it just depends on the project and the time. I do anticipate that they will lighten that back up again once things turn around and the interest rates start to come down and that kind of stuff. But COVID did have an impact on a lot of people, as far and companies as well, as far as the output and the production and all of those kind of things. But they're still offering the programs. I have programs that are what's referred to as government subsidized social housing. They're programs that's designed for Panamanians that have low to mid income that can get in with a very, very, very small down payment, and own properties for like 0.5% to 1.5% interest. And their payments are anywhere from $175 to $225 every 2 weeks. And their qualifications are virtually nothing. And the government provides this, but we have the ability to come in and invest in those projects on the front end. And right now there's 150,000 of these homes needed in Panama. And so the developers are building as fast as they can build, but they can never catch up because they still start aging in to the program, on an ongoing basis. And they will pay 11 to 15% return on your investment guaranteed for the duration of the time that it takes to develop the project, which is between 24 and 36 months.
Wow.
So you're in.
During development? That's insane.
Yes, you're in the deal, you're out of the deal within 24 to 36 months, and you're going to make 11%, 11 is the low end, 11 to 15% per year guaranteed.
Annualized.
Annualized.
Holy cow. During development too, when you really, most investors are used to just being like, okay, I know it will be 3 years before I see anything. It's like, no, wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Okay. So, next question. One, do you need to be like accredited or have any kind of that status like we typically have to do with?
This has nothing to do with accredited investments. It's not a syndication. It's not, it's not any kind of like a 506 Reg D. It's nothing like that. You're going in and you're buying a piece of property. You're buying a single family property for government subsidized housing. You're buying a condominium that you're going to use and or rent. So no, you have no accreditation requirements.
Interesting. Okay. So my next question was going to be about the materials, but you mentioned that they did go up. So prices have kind of moved like the rest of the world with interest rates going up and cost of materials going up. Okay.
Well, so here's the thing. Yes, the cost of materials have gone up, and you have transportation. Everything has to be imported into Panama. You did have all of that, but we have not seen the inflation there like we have in the United States, not even close.
Do they have their own currency?
No, they don't. It's the US dollar.
Okay.
They have a Balboa, but it goes up to a $1 coin. But they trade in the US dollar. But the cost of materials, although they've gone up, we're going to see an 8 to 10% increase in the cost of property, but that's still substantially less than what we're seeing in, places from around the world, especially, the major cities that I referred to in the United States. And I can go on and on, with some of those major cities, Portland, Oregon, for example, Seattle, Washington. I mean, it's just crazy how much less expensive per square foot. We use meters over there that you will see compared to those types of locations. And everything has to be built according to hurricane code. Everything is solid concrete. It's not, wood frame type buildings. And so the quality is just superior, even on the midterm or low end, mid end type projects. But when you get into the high end projects, they're just magnificent.
And you mentioned that all of these, so you're not going to get a single family home. You're going to get a condo.
Not
right?
In the city, you're not, unless, you can anticipate buying any older single family home, or if you have, there are a few places, very, very high end places that do have lots for single family homes, but you're going to be paying $750,000 just for the lot. The homes that were built there in the city previously are, $1 million and up, and they're old.
Wow.
They're very old because everything goes vertical in the city. Now, what is the city? From the airport all the way down to the Panama Canal.
Okay.
That is the city. Anything inside the city. And land is so expensive inside the city because it's so limited now. Right. And what is there, and people that do have the older homes, that like the really older Panamanian locations, they're being cleared out and going vertical.
Interesting. Okay. And so when you do get one, let's say, you get a condo, what does it look like in terms of renting it out? Is there a market for that? Is it pretty typical that you can, are people typically doing the short-term rental opportunity so that they can still use it as well? And is there a market? Are people going down there and using it?
Okay. Again, you have to make sure you're in the right location. And you've got the properties that people are wanting to stay in, and that you're working with a good project developer. But like, for example, I had properties on the ocean in the Coronado Gorgona area, which is the biggest expat community in all of Panama, when I started down there, and they were selling for $165,000 to $195,000 ocean front.
Jeez.
Jeez,
man, and that's freaking pennies.
And those will rent. Especially in high season, and then for the holidays for the Panamanians, because that's where the Panamanians go for their holidays. Then you go into the city, if you're in the right buildings in the city that have short-term rental opportunities because the government limits, buildings that can or cannot be
Got it.
short-term rentals because of the competition with the hotels. But if you're in those short-term rental buildings, they have a hotel license, or they're structured from the get-go to have a short-term rental license. Yes, you can absolutely do really, really well. And we see it depending on, I look at cash on cash return.
Yeah.
A lot of people say, what is the cap rate? What is the return on investment? Well, that's the total price of the condominium. Well, you're not paying cash for that condo. So let's look at cash on
Yes.
cash. But if you do look at the actual price of the property, no matter how much you got in it, we're going to see anywhere from 6 to 9% return on investment annually.
I swear nobody talks about cash on cash return in the US. It's so rare you even see one on an OM, but it's such a valuable indicator for sure.
Well, that's the only thing I teach and that I work with, because the bottom line is this is how much you have tied up out of your hard sweat equity, earned income. So what is the return on investment on what you've got tied up, not on what the total purchase price of that property is, because that in reality is really what you're making. What is your return on investment on that? And when you look at that, we're over 25% on just about everything.
Oh my gosh, that's silly. That's incredible. Okay, so what you mentioned that, your marketing is really limited even in the US. What it is, do people just get that this sounds too good to be true? What seems to be like kind of the thing, people, the holdup, I guess?
Well, you know what? I'm in a niche market. It's very much a niche. And so I typically am being exposed to, I do keynote speeches all over the world prior to COVID. I haven't since COVID because I haven't needed to. I don't need to travel. I don't need to do that. More and more people are looking for that plan B, that safety net, somewhere to run, and just the referral business that I get. And so between the referral business that I get and the podcast and radio broadcasts that I do, we've got tons of exposure and tons of business. But it's definitely a certain type of person that really thinks outside of the box, if you will, that's not just content with life as it is and whatever happens, but the proactive person that's looking for, well, in the event this happens, I need to be prepared and have another plan, which is the plan B. And so I have a lot of those people. My database is well over 10,000 people. And many of those clients that have done deals with me have been with me 10, 15, 20 years and have done deal after deal. They'll get in, they'll get out, they'll roll into 2 more, they'll get out, they'll roll into 3 more. I mean, and it's just an ongoing thing. They've been with me for many, many years. So it's just a continuous flow. And then the contacts that we have and the people that we have coming in just come through referrals, and then the podcast and exposures that we get through shows like yours.
Wow, that's incredible. So it is possible to build a portfolio. You can have 3, 4, 5 units portfolio. Or
I have clients. I'll tell you personally, I have 4 in a project that's being built in Costa del Este. I have 2 in a project that's being built currently in the center of the city. I've got 2 in the building that I live in, and I've got 2 in another building on the ocean. So that's just my portfolio. And then I've got clients that have anywhere from 10 to 25 units in Panama.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I'm trying not to get that shiny object syndrome. I'm sure you probably run into this a lot, but I'm sitting here like, gosh, man, this discount sounds really nice compared to the prices I'm seeing here per unit is insane.
Yeah. Things have gone up so much in the United States. And I mean, I've been looking in Florida in the Panhandle for the last 2 years, and the cost for an oceanfront property in the Panhandle of Florida is absurd for what you get, and the quality finishes cannot even hold a candle to what I'm accustomed to in Panama. And It's so hard to pull the trigger on something like that. Although I know that the rental rates are very, very good. I've just been sitting waiting for them to pull back just a little bit because I do want to have something, because I can drive down there in 5 or 6 hours and be at the ocean, So
from Atlanta, you can drive down there?
To the Panhandle of Florida.
Florida. Sorry.
Not Panama, Central America. No, that's a 3.5 to 4 hour flight.
Got it. Okay. That's what I thought. Okay. Yeah. So you had your eye on Panhandle in Florida. Interesting. And okay, so is there still oceanfront available, or do you typically steer people towards a city, or I guess it just depends what they're looking for then?
It depends on what they're looking for. And we there is not a one-stop shop situation with us. And that's what people need to understand. If you're working with a developer and they only represent that developer's projects, their only concern is selling a property. That is not what we do. We're going to sit down with you and look at what is your 5-year plan? What do you want to accomplish in 5 years? Now we're going to back into that. We're going to look at opportunities and options that fit into that mold to help you accomplish where you want to be in 5 years from now. And it could be a legacy investment, or it might be a short-term investment, 2 to 3 years. I identify short-term as 2 to 3 years, midterm is 3 to 5, long-term is 5 to 10, and then legacy is anything over 10 years. And so we're going to sit down and look at what do you want to accomplish? What kind of return on investments are you looking for? And how can we make that happen? What projects fit into that? And it's probably going to be a multitude of different projects and developers. It's not going to be one developer. I tell everybody, steer clear of anyone that works for one developer, because all they care about is selling you a property in that developer's project. I don't care what developer's project you get in. I'm looking for the kind of deal that's going to help you accomplish what your end goals are.
Interesting. I love that. That's incredible. And it obviously explains your success, right? Is you're very much investor first. How can I help you? Not, this is all we offer, take it or leave it, right? You very much have that repertoire to appease anybody. And so what are you seeing in terms of demographic? Is this typically, older generation? Are the millennials jumping on board with this? What are you seeing in terms of age range?
Well, that's a really interesting question, because prior to, and especially when I got started with Rich Dad, it was the retirees or those about to retire. So it was, late 50s, early 60s. I just had an 89-year-old woman move from Fort Lauderdale by herself to Panama. She just celebrated her 90th birthday, and she is happy as a clam.
Oh,
she
good.
is unbelievable. And so, I mean, I have stories all over the board, and I have young families. But when the COVID situation hit, the digital nomads became a huge portion of our business. In a lot of cases, digital nomads are not looking to buy property. They're just looking to rent property, which is fine. We don't care. Number one, we want to educate, because I believe that real estate is the key to financial success. I always have, and I always will.
Absolutely.
If people understand it, those that are, one and done kind of mentality don't ever need to get into it, because it's like not every deal that you're going to invest in is going to be a winner. The more educated that you get and the more support and guidance that you have, the better off your chances are. But you're still going to, I can sit here and tell you all kinds of horror stories that I've been involved with, but I didn't give up. And you look at the average of all those projects and investments that you've done, what is your return on investment? So it's like the stock market. If somebody tells you I can help you in the stock market and you're going to have 100% profit on every single stock that you pick, well, you need to run, because that's just not true.
Yep, that's a fact. But they will try to tell you that. So,
oh yeah, I know. So your demographics are, of course, the expats are typically people that are ready to retire or close to retirement, or they want to have a second home. So you have everything from your mid 40s to your mid 60s in that category. The digital nomads are those that are wanting to cross the borders of where they were born to work digitally from their homes and be able to have their toes in the sand at 3:00 in the afternoon with their computer in their lap and doing what they do. So we have a huge influx of that, and so really now your demographics are across the board. I would say we've probably got about a 60-40 split with the the millennials, the younger families. And then the 60% would still be the expats, the pre-retirees, that kind of thing.
That's awesome. I love it. Yeah, the digital nomad, when you put that, when that was in your bio, I was like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense, especially considering now what I realize are the costs of living and such down there. So, of course, this all sounds great. I hate to end it on this. Well, we won't end it here, but one question is, what are some of the downsides, the risks that you're, potential risks?
The real downside is not having multiple exit strategies. And I saw that during COVID. when people had invested simply for rental income and they didn't have any other plan of action. That's definitely a downside. And you know what? None of us ever anticipated or planned for something that was a worldwide shutdown. But fortunately, we did have, like the Wonders U that continue to keep their properties full. So knowing that you're in a good, solid property, number one, and having multiple exit strategies so that you're not stuck in a position where you're sitting there for 1 or 2 years with absolutely no revenue. And that is truly the biggest downside that I've seen in Panama. Okay, so pretty typical risk then, right? Just that really would just be oversight, if you don't have, and that's a really great point too, for those listening. For any investment, if you only have one exit strategy and you're banking on the one exit strategy, you need to sit down right now and come up with at least one, if not 2 more exit strategies, because again, nobody could predict a worldwide global shutdown due to, a pandemic, right? So you've got to have those things in place. Well, this has been absolutely incredible, Evie. I know I've gotten a lot out of it, and I'm sure the listeners have as well. We'll go ahead now and wind down and jump to the final 5. First question, best advice you've gotten from a mentor? The best advice that I've gotten from a mentor was to never stop learning, that when you stop learning, you start dying.
That's a fact. They did a study, I think, about people who stop learning and reading, and they actually found that they do age quicker in terms of body decomposition.
Wow, I didn't know that. I'll have to research that.
What is about your career that makes you feel like you're fulfilling your why?
My why is definitely the opportunity and the privilege of being able to teach other people what I have learned and being able to pass that on and help other people have the same success or better, greater success than I've had. That is a true gift.
I love that. That's awesome. Favorite non-real estate or non-investment related book?
Non-investment book. I don't read the power. Let's see, the purpose driven. What is it? Purpose. I'm just drawing a blank. I don't read very many books that are not real estate related.
I know.
Related.
This is probably one of the biggest hang-up questions.
Purpose driven life. I love that book.
Nice. Okay, I'll add that to the list. I love it. If you could have any superpower, what would it be?
That I could visit my son in heaven.
Oh, love that. That's awesome. Well, what's the best way for people to get a hold of you and learn more?
Go to my websites. Evie Brooks Panama has a quick 10-minute video training on real estate investing internationally. And then by visiting there, I will send you more information and include you in our webinar training seminar database. So, because we do webinar trainings all the time on things like how to use your IRA for investing internationally. What are the tax benefits? We do all kinds of different things. That would be one. And then just my working website is mypanamavacationrealty.com.
Awesome. We will link those in the show notes, make it super easy. Evie, thank you again. This was absolutely incredible.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you again for tuning in. Who do you know that wants more cash flow? Share this episode with them so you can grow your cash flow together. If you enjoyed the show, make sure you're subscribed on your platform of choice so you never miss a new episode. Go to KataniCapitalGroup.com to learn more.